What happens when an unsinkable fortress slowly sinks under its own weight? In a shocking tale of arrogance and miscalculation, Russia's Kaliningrad region, once seen as a strategic stronghold, finds itself drowning in economic despair. Cut off by then-tightening sanctions from the West and surrounded by NATO forces, this vital enclave is crumbling, not to bombs, but to the devastating grip of hunger and hopelessness. Kaliningrad, once a bustling hub of trade and industry, has been reduced to ruins. A dramatic 70% drop in port trade has paralyzed major factories like Avtotor, leaving shelves bare and families struggling in silence. The staggering 34% hike in prices for basic goods like butter is a painful reflection of the desperate situation. Behind this tragedy isn't just war, it's a new form of economic warfare, one where anguish is bred from within as the mystical fortress succumbs to starvation. How did this thriving enclave transform into a graveyard of industry in such a short span? To grasp the unraveling of Kaliningrad, we must first explore its geographical isolation. Severed from the Russian mainland, it sits ensnared between NATO allies Poland and Lithuania. What Putin envisioned as a dagger in NATO's side has become an irreversible cage, one that has strangled Kaliningrad's lifelines. NATO's blockade began with Lithuania enforcing strict EU sanctions. The only land route from Russia, a narrow railway track, was rendered useless. What once took days for goods to travel has morphed into a nightmarish maze of bureaucratic delays. With each passing day, the connection to the Russian mainland faded away like a lost dream. The sea, Kaliningrad's lifeblood, has suffered the same fate, now defined by a grim silence. Ports that once buzzed with activity now lie desolate, echoing only the despairing howl of the wind. Sanctioned goods languish, and shipments have been halted, trapping the region in eerie isolation. The vibrancy Kaliningrad once radiated is now a ghostly memory. As if that wasn't enough, the skies above Kaliningrad are now a no-fly zone for Russian aircraft. The few remaining paths are monitored by NATO forces, ensuring that any attempt to breach this blockade faces immediate scrutiny. This atmosphere of suffocation has turned the once spirited region into a symbol of stagnation, where hope flickers like a dying candle. The abrupt downfall of industry has triggered a devastating wave of unemployment, sweeping through Kaliningrad's once thriving workforce. Thousands are without income, and while official sources remain silent, whispers suggest that unemployment may already exceed 30%. Dreams of prosperity unraveled overnight, leaving families struggling to even make ends meet. The consequences of this economic collapse are strikingly visible. The supermarkets lay bare, haunted by the shadows of high prices and dwindling stock. Basic food items have become luxuries, with meat and fresh produce disappearing from shelves, sending residents into panic. Rations, reminiscent of past hardships, may soon become a grim reality. As discontent simmers, the people of Kaliningrad are left with a painful choice, to accept their fate or to rise against governance that once promised strength. Images of desperation abound, tragedy manifested in brawls over food and growing lines at gas stations. Trust in leadership has been shattered, as citizens grapple with hunger and disillusionment. Kaliningrad's descent illustrates a poignant lesson: how a supposed stronghold can turn into a burden for a nation. In the ever-changing landscape of global politics, even the mightiest can find their power stripped away, revealing vulnerability beneath the surface. This unfolding saga stands as a harrowing reminder of the perils of isolation and overreach in a world defined by interconnectedness. In this tale of isolation and despair, Kaliningrad, once a thriving trade hub, is now drowning in its own economic miscalculations. Here, amidst the howling winds of the deserted ports, a shocking reality unfolds. The fortress that was meant to protect Russia is quietly collapsing under the weight of sanctions and mismanagement. Kaliningrad's land connection, a slender railway slicing through Lithuania, was the last lifeline to Russia. Intense enforcement of EU sanctions since 2022 severed this vital link, turning bustling trains into stagnant ghost carriages. No longer could essential goods like steel and technology traverse its tracks. What once took days transformed into bureaucratic labyrinths, stranding wagons at the border, sealed and lifeless. This iron pathway, vital for trade, suddenly crumbled into a chasm of economic isolation. As the blockade tightened like a noose, it didn't just strangle trade, it gave rise to the haunting echo of empty docks. Once, the bustling Kaliningrad port served as energetic arteries for Western industries, exporting vehicles and energy resources. Now, those same docks lie deserted, the vibrant hum of activity a distant memory. A stark 70% decline in port trade turned these once bustling centers into eerie shelters for the wind. With no ships docking, the remnants of commerce faded, leaving only whispers of lost prosperity. Meanwhile, NATO's naval dominance in the Baltic Sea turned these seas into a graveyard of ambition. Shipments that once journeyed freely are now ghostly footnotes in trade records. Ports, previously alive with the cacophony of commerce, now sit lifeless and abandoned stage where the only performance is the mournful howl of the wind. The world's logistical lifelines have vanished, and the vibrant trade routes have metamorphosed into pathways of despair. As the walls close in, how will the people of Kaliningrad respond to their slow descent into deprivation? Will desperation provoke action, or will they remain spectators in a tragic play orchestrated by unseen forces? In the shadow of Kaliningrad's once thriving industries, a quiet disaster unfolds. The once bustling port, once a symbol of Russia's economic vigor, now lies desolate, its silence punctuated only by the sound of howling winds. Despite appearances, where bureaucracy claims shipments continue, reality tells a different story. Delays and suspicions have paralyzed deliveries. The air of despondency hangs heavy as ports refuse entry to sanctioned goods, fearing further complications. Kaliningrad now stands as an industrial graveyard, its vibrant history erased by geopolitical miscalculations. The last lifeline for Kaliningrad, a narrow corridor of air traffic, has become a scene of constant monitoring and anxiety. Russian planes heading toward their homeland must navigate a heavily surveilled pathway across the Baltic Sea, ensuring every movement is scrutinized. This irritating reality reveals a shocking truth: not even the Russian Air Force can freely access its own territory. Poland and neighboring Baltic states maintain a watchful eye, enforcing an invisible line that reinforces Kaliningrad's isolation. The repercussions of severed supply chains have been dire. Kaliningrad, once a beacon of industrial prowess, has devolved into a shell of its former self. The Avtotor factory, a proud emblem of production, once churning out hundreds of thousands of vehicles, now echoes with silence. As essential components vanished due to sanctions and the withdrawal of Western partners, the factory's production lines halted abruptly, leaving thousands with nothing but despair. Yet behind closed doors, this economic collapse weaves a deeper narrative, a story of lost dreams and shattered identities. Once a thriving community mingling high salaries with modern comforts, today, Kaliningradese are left grappling with bleakness. With the factory's doors barred, the vibrant spirit of industry is replaced by a haunting emptiness. What fate awaits the laborers, now abandoned in their poverty? As desperation grips the region, the air thickens with unease. The question lingers: when will the citizens, once proud and hopeful, finally lose faith in their leadership? Kaliningrad's downfall challenges everything they believed, an unraveling reality demanding answers. Just when it seemed the situation could not worsen, another setback looms on the horizon. Imagine a fortress cracking under its own weight, not from invaders, but from the silent grip of isolation and pride. Could Putin's unsinkable ship be sinking faster than anyone dared dream? Workers once thrived here, basking in paychecks and perks from the West. But sanctions severed ties, halting deliveries of vital components, leaving assembly lines eerily silent. Factories in Kaliningrad once buzzed with activity, echoing the roar of machinery. Now, they echo emptiness. Production has ground to a near halt, leaving workers idle overnight. Where engines purred and chassis gleamed, unemployment thrives instead. The air reeks of rust and lost hopes. Touch the cold steel gates, they no longer vibrate with life. Despair ripples out. This industrial meltdown sparks widespread joblessness. From colossal plants to docksides, from shops to streets, incomes vanish. Whispers suggest unemployment tops 30%, though no official admits it. Bills pile up, families struggle. Feel the weight of unpaid debts, heavy as chain metal. This isn't just recession, it's societal breakdown. But the crisis cuts deepest at home. Shelves once stocked with abundance now gape empty. Smell the faint, stale grain amidst shortages. Economic blockade starves the land's food flow. Skyrocketing prices push basics beyond reach, turning affluence into austerity. Butter leaps 34% in 1 year alone, per records. Meat, dairy, eggs, greens, luxuries now, in Russia's western gem. Sanctions sever links to Ukraine and Baltics, fresh harvests cease. Panic stirs officials as supplies dwindle. Rumor swirls, ration cards loom. Reminiscent of 1990s turmoil or Soviet collapse. Can this paragon of progress spiral into ghost town's famine? Kaliningrad, beacon to the west, morphs into despair's island, even poorer than Russia's heart. In its peak province, starvation's shadow looms. Twisted fate, a president's boast breeds citizens' agony. What hidden cost erodes the army's might next? But what if the mighty fortress Putin boasted about is crumbling not from outside bombs, but from inner starvation? Imagine shelves once stocked with delights now echoing with emptiness, where the stale air carries whispers of panic. Could this trap swallow Russia's entire army? Previously, Kaliningrad's isolation sparked food shortages, escalating to rationing fears, turning vibrant markets into battlegrounds of despair. Recalling the pre-sanctions era, the air hummed with factory roars, and the tangy scent of fresh bread wafted through bustling streets. Now, that prosperity feels like a distant echo, a tactile memory of full baskets weighing heavily in hopeful hands. This regression mirrored Russia's turbulent 90s, evoking the Soviet Union's collapse. Kaliningrad, once Europe's envy, has devolved into an obscure wasteland, lagging behind Russia's economic averages. In its most advanced outpost, residents braced for food rationing, a harrowing echo of scarce times. How could a symbol of Russian might descend into such vulnerability? This crisis bred festering rage and disillusionment in Kaliningrad's populace. Citizens duped by Putin's strong Russia myth, once savoring Western comforts, now grappled with gnawing hunger and destitution from Kremlin's blunders. Their betrayal fueled unrest, with growing contempt for officials and Putin erupting on social channels. He vowed an unbreakable bastion, the chants cried, yet starvation claims us within. Leaked visuals captured market scuffles, gas pump skirmishes, fraying social fabric in the oblast's core. Such turmoil shattered state faith, exposing fissures in authorities' grip. These riots, fueled by empty stomachs and simmering resentment, question, was Putin's grand design merely an illusion, destined to self-destruct? Yet, this downfall exemplifies how Putin's leverage tool morphs into Western economic shackles via NATO's geographical edge. It proves fragile isolated assets like Crimea or Transnistria dangle precariously. Kaliningrad's plight offers Moscow a chilling warning: any outpost risks shifting from projection power into strangled burden, draining endless resources. This underscores geopolitics' castle snare. But does the trap engulf just civilians and markets? No, its true prey is the military guardian, corroding from within as civilian fury infects troops in fortified bases. Pausing here, what unseen forces now target the very defenders of this sinking fortress? The hum of discontent will seep into armored shells, eroding resolve, from cockpit vibrations to ammunition depot whispers, turning protectors into prisoners of despair. And if the army falters, is Russia's entire Baltic gambit doomed? The stench of decay lingers, metals feel colder underfoot, and the distant roar of silence heralds calamity. Will this vulnerability spark a mutinous tremor, humiliating Putin's global stance with an internal coup? In the heart of Europe, a symbol of strength and power is quietly unraveling. The fortress of Kaliningrad, once thought to be an unsinkable aircraft carrier for Russia, is now submerged in its own economic failures. Vladimir Putin believed he had secured a stronghold, yet it is his arrogance that has led to this decline. Economic sanctions from the United States and the European Union, coupled with NATO's tight grip on the Baltic Sea, have transformed this vibrant trade hub into a desolate island of despair. Imagine walking through a market where basic necessities are priced beyond imagination. The cost of butter has surged by 34% in just a year. The shelves, which once overflowed with goods, now reveal empty spaces, telling tales of a food crisis tightening its grip. The reality is stark: Kaliningrad is not under military siege, it's suffering from the insidious nature of economic warfare. The once bustling factories, like the renowned Avtoder, have ground to a halt, leaving behind a chilling silence. How did this region, once a beacon of hope and prosperity, become an industrial graveyard? The answer lies in its geographical isolation. Cut off from the Russian mainland and surrounded by NATO countries, Kaliningrad was envisioned as a dagger to pierce the heart of NATO, but that dagger has transformed into a cage. The first blow came when Lithuania enforced EU sanctions, effectively severing the only railway link to Russia. What were once swift deliveries turned into an agonizing wait, with trains filled with empty cargo being sent back, sealing this enclave off from necessary supplies. Yet, the land blockade was only the beginning. The sea blockade soon followed, silencing the bustling ports that used to pulse with activity. Major brands shipped their goods from this port, but now, the docks echo with the loneliness of forgotten ships. Critical parts for production have been withheld, the lifeblood of industry has been sucked away. Meanwhile, the skies above have become a no-fly zone for Russian aircraft, adding further insulation to this trapped region. The once thriving capital's spirit is fading, the manifest sorrow is palpable. The legendary Avtotor factory is now merely remnants of torment, leaving thousands jobless and desperate. Unofficially, unemployment is soaring beyond 30%. The closure of vital industries has birthed an employment crisis that's reshaping the very fabric of life in Kaliningrad. Food shortages loom large, with essential products vanishing while prices soar alarmingly high. As food seems like a luxury, local authorities are contemplating rationing systems reminiscent of bleak historical times, sending shudders through a populace that had dreamed of prosperity. Kaliningrad, meant to be a showcase of Russian strength, reveals the stark contrast of impoverishment and hunger. The people's faith in powerful narratives is dissipating with each empty market shelf, and anger is bubbling just below the surface. The unyielding truth is that this economic and humanitarian disaster is a direct consequence of Kremlin miscalculations. As anger rises, dissent simmers on social media, turning voices into a call for change. Kaliningrad's fall serves as a glaring reminder of vulnerability, showing that even the mightiest fortress can deteriorate from within when cut off from lifelines. Is this the beginning of the end for a once heralded outpost of Russian vigor? Picture this, an unsinkable fortress, a Russian outpost in Europe's heart, crumbling not from cannon fire, but from Putin's overreach. Western sanctions and NATO's grip turned Kaliningrad into a ghost town of trade and industry, with ports idle, factories silent, and shelves bare. Hunger looms as food prices spike, a modern siege choking a once proud region. Now, building on the decay creeping into Kaliningrad's port of Baltijsk, where exercises dwindle, ships rot faster than morale, and readiness hits rock bottom, a moral erosion grips the navy. Can you imagine the sting of it? Russian sailors watching NATO warships glide past their harbors like uninvited guests at a funeral? What wakes them in their bunks isn't engines roaring, but the distant thud of foreign hulls cutting through water. Ashore, the air reeks of stale bread and forgotten promises, store shelves groaning under shortages. Meat rots on sad excuses for counters. Eggs feel like dusty relics from a bygone era. Fingers brush empty spots, wondering if tomorrow brings rationing. Families starve in whispers, children with hollow cheeks, yet these men sail for what? A regime that stranded them? Belief erodes like rust on metal, hearts hardening into doubt. Polish, German, Swedish, American vessels patrol freely just offshore. They taunt without a shot. Fellow crew hear rumors of queues for gas, fists flying at pumps. Homes echo with sobs over unaffordable butter. What are they defending now? An empire of empty boasts? The sea breeze carries the salty sting of defeat. Waves lap mockingly at idle ships. Chains clank futilely against malware-stricken chains. Pauses grip their routines, exercise logs thinning, alerts unheeded. This isn't war. It's a slow bleed, morale soaking into the deck, staining boots with disillusion. But the rot spreads beyond the fleet. Ground troops of the 11th Army Corps huddle in Kaliningrad, their tanks barbed wire relics, armored vehicles collecting dust like abandoned toys. Those famed Iskander missile systems? They sit, hungry for fuel the sanctions starved them of. Spare parts vanish into the void, leaving machines impotent. No more threats to Poland or Lithuania, just static ghosts and bases, mired in their own trenches. Ammo dwindles dangerously, no mainland trains piercing the blockade. Commanders ration every bullet, every MESK-9 or whatever scraps remain, forced to choose, defend or perish. Soldiers feel caged on this isolated rock, NATO armies breathing down three sides, Baltic waters mocking as barriers. In any flare-up, rescue feels like a distant myth. Psyche shoved into corners by isolation, wills fracturing. An invisible blade sharper than tank shells. This siege whispers, you're expendable. Drafts chill bones, boots sticking to mud from endless patrols without purpose. Sirens wail falsely now, echoes of forgotten drills. Hearts pound not from readiness, but rage at betrayal. And here's the twist that shadows Putin, NATO's method mirrors Ukraine's in Crimea, elevated to art. No bombs, no invasions, just strangled supply veins, letting collapse devour from the inside. Ukraine targets Crimea's bridges, depots, command posts. Fuel lines choke, nerves fray. In Kaliningrad, it's the same poison, refined. Western eyes watch as Russia's edge blunts itself. Crimea suffocates under strikes, men forgetting victories as gear rusts. Kaliningrad's army withers, a precedent screaming fragility. Every outpost, Crimea, Transnistria, now warns Moscow, one wrong move, and Anders turn assets to albatrosses. Is Putin's dagger now a noose? Will his fortress feed not armies, but decomposition? Feel the weight, isolation's cold embrace, sirens fading, boots dragging. Fresh bread smells pipe dreams. Metal groans in silent factories. A nation unravels, thread by choked thread. Imagine the nerve-wracking reality of once mighty warships now crumbling without fuel, spare parts, or ammunition. How does this expose Putin's hidden vulnerabilities? 172 characters. We've seen how NATO's clever strategy mimics Ukraine's chokehold on Crimea, by sabotaging the Kerch Bridge, fuel depots, and command centers, slowly strangling the Russian forces from within. Now, picture this escalating nightmare as NATO tightens its grip on Kaliningrad, economically suffocating it through the blocked Lithuanian transit and sealed Baltic Sea routes. The air thickens with dread, the stench of failure lingering like smoke from abandoned docks. How can the Kremlin ignore this terrifying lesson? It reveals the fragility of Russia's isolated outposts, frozen conflict zones like South Ossetia and Abkhazia in Georgia. These remote edges cling to fragile lifelines from Moscow. One snip from the west could starve these puppet regimes into oblivion. No bullets needed, just relentless pressure. The touch of betrayal cuts deep, the taste of despair as families face empty pantries. Who would have thought? Putin's prized dagger plunged into Europe's heart, has morphed into a festering tumor, sapping the regime's dwindling strength? It's no longer a tactical triumph, but a crippled beast on the verge of implosion, with troops immobile, spirits broken, and citizens teetering toward rebellion. This monument to arrogance, corroding on Baltic shores, reeks of rot and regret. Feel the icy shiver, the poison creeping back, slowly infecting the hand that wielded it with misplaced pride. Who wins when pride turns to poison? 1,245 characters.